I pulled into our driveway at 7:15 p.m., just like I did every Wednesday. It had been one of those long, dragging days where every hour felt stretched thin, like time itself was playing a joke on me. The boss had dumped more work on my desk than usual, and by the time I walked out of that office, all I had left in me was caffeine and habit. But I told myself it was all right. Home was waiting for me. A warm dinner. The smell of the candles my wife, Maggie, liked to light in the evening. Maybe even a quiet night together. At least, that's what I thought. I knew something was off the second I pulled up. The house was dark. Maggie always left the porch light on for me, always. Even when she went out, even when I came home late. But tonight, the house sat there, quiet and unwelcoming, like it had nothing to offer me. Then I noticed the car. My car. It was parked exactly where I had left it that morning. Only now, someone was sitting in the passenger seat. I squinted through the windshield as I stepped out of my truck, closing the doors softer than I usually would. My boots crunched against the gravel, slow and careful, as I made my way toward it. The street lamp cast just enough light for me to see through the window. And there she was, Maggie, sitting in the front seat of my car, with another man. I stopped mid-step. My stomach twisted into something ugly. She was leaning toward him, her face just inches from his. Her lips moved, saying something I couldn't hear. Then just like that, she kissed him. It wasn't just some quick, careless thing either. No, she kissed him like she meant it, like she had done it before, like it was something she wasn't afraid to do in the middle of our own damn driveway. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, but I didn't move. I couldn't move. The guy, some scruffy-looking man in a rideshare driver's jacket, grinned as she pulled away, his hand resting just a little too comfortably on her thigh. They looked relaxed, completely unaware of me, standing just a few feet away, watching everything. I could have stood there longer, letting the anger rise up and explode. I could have marched up to the car, ripped the door open, and demanded answers. But I wasn't the type to make a scene, not yet. Instead, I let my boots hit the gravel louder this time. Maggie's head snapped toward me, and for the first time in what was probably weeks, I saw fear in her eyes. Her whole body went stiff, her hands fumbling for the door handle. The man beside her shifted uncomfortably, like a kid getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I didn't say a word. Not to her. Not to him. I just turned on my heel and walked toward the house. Let them squirm. The front door clicked shut behind me, sealing me off from the cold night, from them, from whatever the hell was waiting for me in this new reality. I stood there for a moment, the silence pressing in, waiting for my brain to catch up with what I had just seen. A few weeks? I dropped my keys onto the entryway table and made my way to the living room, sinking into the couch like the weight of the world had finally landed on my shoulders. The air felt heavier now, different, like the walls were closing in on me, whispering things I hadn't noticed before. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, staring at nothing, before I heard the front door open. The soft shuffle of her footsteps made my jaw clench. She hesitated near the entrance, probably waiting for me to say something. I didn't. She moved further inside, the weight of her presence thick in the air. I finally spoke, my voice calmer than I expected. "Lock the door, Maggie. You left it open." She obeyed without a word, like a kid afraid of setting off an already angry parent. When she turned back around, I finally looked at her, really looked at her, and I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. The woman I had loved. The woman I had built a life with. Gone. In her place was a stranger. The silence stretched long between us, and I let her squirm, let her feel every second of this weight pressing down on her. Finally, she spoke. "I am sorry." Her voice was so quiet I almost missed it. I tapped my fingers against the armrest, tilting my head slightly. "For what exactly?" She swallowed hard, her eyes flicking toward the window, like she was looking for an escape. But there wasn't one. "Not tonight." "For tonight," she finally said, her voice shaky. "I made a mistake. A mistake." I let out a dry laugh. People forgetting an anniversary was a mistake. People leaving the stove on was a mistake. This was something else. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "How long have you been making this mistake?" She hesitated just a second too long. "A few weeks," she admitted. And there it was. While I was coming home every night, kissing her on the forehead, telling her I loved her, she was doing this. I felt my jaw tighten, but I didn't let the rage take over. Not yet. Instead, I just sat back and let the weight of her confession settle in the room. And I watched her fall apart under it. I rubbed a hand over my face, not to wipe away tears, because there weren't any, but to steady myself, to keep my thoughts from unraveling. Why him? That question hit her differently. Her shoulders tensed, and she blinked fast, like she hadn't expected it. Maybe she thought I'd be yelling by now, throwing things, demanding to know how long she had been sneaking around. But I wasn't interested in theatrics. I wanted the truth. I don't know, she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't supposed to be anything. He was just there, and she stopped herself, her breath hitching like she didn't want to say the next part. I was lonely. That word hit harder than anything else she could have said. Lonely. It carried a weight, an accusation without being outright blame. She wasn't pointing fingers at me, but the meaning was clear enough. I exhaled sharply. So, instead of talking to me, instead of telling me how you felt, you turned to a cab driver? My tone wasn't angry. It was worse than that. It was disbelieving, like I couldn't wrap my head around how far she'd let things go. It wasn't like that, she said quickly, shaking her head. I didn't plan for any of this to happen. I stood up, not to leave, but because I needed to move. Sitting there, in the same space as her, breathing the same air, felt suffocating. I paced to the window and looked out at the street where his cab had been parked just minutes ago. He was gone now, but the wreckage he had helped create remained. You didn't plan for it, I muttered, more to myself than her. That makes it so much better. I heard her shift behind me, her footsteps hesitant. Tom, please, she said softly. I know I screwed up. I know. But I didn't mean for it to go this far. I don't even care about him. I care about you. Her words fell flat. They didn't reach me, didn't stick the way she wanted them to. And I think she knew it, because she kept going, her voice growing more desperate. Please, we can fix this. I know we can. I turned around to face her, my arms crossed over my chest. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face streaked with tears she hadn't bothered to wipe away. She looked like a woman falling apart, but it didn't move me the way it once would have. I'm not interested in fixing something when I don't even know how it broke, I said evenly. So before you start begging me for forgiveness, why don't you tell me how we got here? She nodded slowly, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I knew it was wrong, Tom. I knew the whole time. But it did not feel real until tonight when you saw us. And now, I do not even know how to fix it. I pushed off the wall and walked past her, heading toward the kitchen. I needed space, any kind of distance, even if it was only a few feet. She did not follow, but I could hear her quiet sobs behind me, filling the silence like static. I grabbed a glass from the cabinet, filled it with water, and took a slow sip before setting it down on the counter. My fingers tapped against the cool surface as my mind worked through what she had said. She wanted an escape, to feel alive, to be someone else. And she had chosen a man who probably did not even know her middle name, who had never seen her at her worst, who had never held her when she cried. He did not have to deal with the real parts of her, the stress, the responsibilities, the messy parts of life that make love real. He got the best version of her, the one that laughed easily, the one that was carefree, the one I had not seen in years. I was not sure if that made it better or worse. I turned back to her, finally breaking the silence. So what now? She stood in the doorway, arms still wrapped around herself. She looked small, like she was afraid that stepping into the room would make it all more real. I do not know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But I do not want to lose you. I let out a humorless laugh. You should have thought about that before you climbed into my car with him. Her breath caught, and she wiped at her face with her sleeve, her shoulders shaking. Please, Tom, I will do anything. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. I made a mistake, but I love you. I love us. Do not throw everything away because of this. I exhaled through my nose, staring at her. You are acting like you haven't already thrown it away. She shook her head frantically. No, that is not true. I messed up, but I never stopped loving you. That has not changed. I did not answer right away. Instead, I leaned back against the counter, crossing my arms. You know what is funny? I asked. I did not walk through that door tonight thinking I would be having this conversation. I thought I would have dinner, maybe watch a little TV, fall asleep next to my wife like everything was fine. But that is the thing about life, Maggie. It does not give a damn about your plans. She took a hesitant step toward me. It does not have to end like this. We can fix it, Tom. I will prove it to you. I tilted my head, studying her. You are assuming I want to fix it. Her breath hitched, her lips parting in shock. You do not. I let the question hang in the air. Instead of answering, I walked past her, heading toward the stairs. I did not need to stand there and listen to her cry. Did not need to let her scramble for more excuses. She called my name, her voice breaking, but I did not stop. I needed time. Time to think. Time to figure out if the woman standing in my house was still my wife, or just a stranger who shared her face. I did not expect to wake up with all the answers, and I sure as hell did not wake up with forgiveness in my heart. The morning air felt heavy, thick with the unspoken words still hanging between us. I had spent the night staring at the ceiling, the weight of everything pressing down on me like a boulder. Laura had stayed downstairs, or at least she had not come into the bedroom. I did not know if that was out of guilt or fear, and honestly, I did not care. When I finally dragged myself out of bed, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I showered, got dressed, and headed downstairs. She was in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked like hell. Red, swollen eyes, the same clothes as last night, her hair a tangled mess. It was clear she had not slept either. Good. At least she had the decency to lose sleep over this. I poured myself a cup of coffee, not bothering to acknowledge her right away. I could feel her eyes on me, waiting, bracing. Did you sleep at all? She finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Enough. The bitterness in my tone matched the coffee in my mug. The silence stretched between us, long and suffocating. I was not going to be the one to break it. If she had something to say, she needed to say it. After a few minutes, she took a deep breath and folded her hands on the table. I know you hate me right now, she said. I hate myself too. I took a slow sip, giving her nothing. She exhaled shakily. I want to tell you everything, Tom. The truth. Not just about him, but about everything. About how I have been feeling. About what I should have told you a long time ago. I set my coffee down and leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Go ahead. I'm listening. Her hands gripped each other so tightly that her knuckles turned white. It was not just about feeling lonely. It was about feeling invisible. Like I was just part of the background of your life. You would come home, we would eat dinner, watch TV, go to bed, and do it all over again. But it felt like we were just going through the motions. Like you were here, but you were not really here. Her words cut deep, but I refused to let her see it. She was describing our life like it was a slow-moving car crash, something inevitable. I did not like that. It felt like an excuse. So, instead of talking to me about it, you found someone else to make you feel seen? My voice was steady, but I could see the way she flinched. It was not about him, she insisted. It was about me. I needed to feel something, anything other than empty. And you did not think I could give that to you? I asked, my eyes locking onto hers. Or did you just not care enough to give me the chance? She swallowed hard, looking down at the table. I did not think you would understand. You were always so busy, so focused on work. I did not want to be another problem for you to solve. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. That is rich. You did not want to be a problem. So instead, you became the worst possible one. She wiped at her face with the sleeve of her sweater, sniffing hard. I know I messed up, Tom. I know I did. But I want to fix this. I want to be honest, even if it is too late. I owe you that much. I studied her for a long moment before nodding toward her cup. Then start talking. Tell me about him. Who is he? She hesitated, then took a shaky breath. His name is Rick. He has been driving cabs for years. He is divorced, has a kid he barely sees. He is easy to talk to. He made me feel comfortable. But he did not push me into anything, if that is what you were wondering. I made the choices. It was all me. Good to know, I muttered, though it did not make me feel any better. And now? Are you still in contact with him? No, she said quickly. I blocked his number last night. I will never speak to him again, I swear. I searched her face for any sign of a lie. She looked broken, shattered in a way I had never seen before. But the problem with liars is that once they lie, you can never be sure when they have stopped. And why should I believe you? Her shoulders sagged, and she let out a shaky breath. Because I'm done lying, Tom. I'm done hiding things. If you give me a chance, I will prove it to you. I tapped my fingers against the table, thinking. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to grab my keys, walk out the door, and never look back. I exhaled slowly. You have got a long road ahead of you, Laura, and I do not know if you will make it to the end. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks again. I will do whatever it takes. I did not respond. Not because I did not hear her, but because I did not have an answer for her yet. Forgiveness was not something you could hand out like a bandage. It did not fix what was broken, and it sure as hell did not erase what she had done. The rest of the day moved like a slow, dragging weight. I could not focus on anything, could not watch TV, could not read a newspaper, could not even eat. Meanwhile, Laura busied herself with cleaning, organizing things that were already organized, wiping the kitchen counters as if she could scrub away the guilt. I watched her for a while, noticing how her hands shook as she stacked dishes in the cabinet. She was restless, maybe even terrified, but no matter how much she cleaned, she could not erase what had happened. At around 4 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. For a second, I thought it might be the cab driver. Maybe some bold, shameless message from him, thinking he had something to say to me. But when I checked, it was just a work reminder about a meeting scheduled for the next morning. Nothing that mattered in the grand scheme of things. Laura walked into the room carrying a basket of folded laundry. She set it down on the chair across from me, hesitating like she was unsure if she was allowed to stay. I did not tell her to leave, so she took it as permission to sit. "What are you thinking?" she asked carefully, her voice cautious, like she was stepping on a thin ice. I kept my gaze on the window, watching the leaves sway in the wind. "I am thinking you were lucky I did not throw you out last night." Her head dropped, her fingers tightening on her lap. "I would not have blamed you if you had." I rubbed my jaw, feeling the tension coiled in my muscles. "The problem is I do not know if you are sorry because you regret what you did or because you got caught." "I am sorry for all of it," she said quickly, her voice cracking. "I should have talked to you. I should have told you how I was feeling instead of running to someone else. I know that now. Knowing it now does not change the fact that you did not," I said, leaning forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Do you even understand what you have done? You did not just hurt me, Laura. You broke something I do not know how to fix. Trust is not something you can patch up with apologies." She nodded, her lip trembling as she wiped away another tear. "I know, but I want to try." I let out a long breath, staring at her, trying to decide if there was anything left in me that wanted to try too. I was not ready to forgive, not by a long shot, but I needed to know if she was telling the truth now, if she was serious about ending this. I stood up, and she flinched slightly, like she thought I might walk out the door for good. "Where are you going?" "Out," I said, grabbing my jacket. "I need air." She did not try to stop me, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Maybe she thought I would not come back. I walked down the street, not far, just to a coffee shop where I could sit without her watching me. Somewhere I could think, somewhere I could breathe. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my messages until I reached our last conversation. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I finally typed out a message. "Do you still have anything to hide?" I did not expect a response right away, but less than a minute later, my phone buzzed. "No, ask me anything, and I will tell you the truth." I stared at the screen, my pulse steady but my mind racing. I knew exactly what I needed to ask. "When was the last time you saw him before last night?" Her response came almost instantly. 3 days ago. He picked me up after work. We did not kiss, we did not touch, we just talked. But I know it does not matter. I should not have gotten into his cab at all. I clenched my jaw, feeling the familiar weight of betrayal settle deeper into my chest. She was still confessing things, which meant she had not told me everything yet. "Did you ever go to his place?" This time, she took longer to reply. A full minute passed before my phone buzzed again. "Once." I did not stay long. We talked, and then I left. "I swear, Tom." I exhaled sharply. That was the problem. I could not take her word for anything anymore. I typed one final message. "If he calls you, if he texts you, or if you ever feel tempted to contact him again, What will you do? Her answer was immediate. I will show you the message, and you can be there when I block him again. I will do whatever you need me to do. I stared at her words, my grip tightening around the phone. She was saying all the right things, doing what she thought I needed to hear. But would it last? Or was this just another temporary fix until the guilt faded and the temptation returned? I stayed at the coffee shop for another hour, letting the sounds of strangers talking and the clinking of cups keep me grounded. The world outside kept moving, completely unaware that mine had stopped. When I finally stood up and walked back home, I still did not have all the answers. But I had one thought repeating in my head. If she wanted to prove herself, she was going to have to pass every test I gave her. And I was not going to make it easy. I walked back to the house, the evening air biting against my skin. Each step felt heavier than the last, like I was dragging the weight of everything she had done behind me. When I reached the front door, I hesitated, hand on the doorknob. A part of me wanted to keep walking, leave her behind, let her sit in the wreckage of her choices. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the life we had built, was not ready to throw it all away just yet. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was eerily silent. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that makes you feel like something has already been lost. I found her in the living room, curled up on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest. She looked up the moment I entered, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. "You are back," she whispered, like she was not sure I would be. "Yeah," I said, setting my jacket on the chair. "But I'm not here to make you feel better." Her breath hitched, but she did not say anything. She knew better than to expect comfort from me now. I sat across from her, leaning forward with my elbows resting on my knees. "We're going to lay everything out, Laura. No more half-truths, no more excuses. I want the entire story, every ugly detail. If you lie to me now, it is over. Understand?" She nodded, her hands shaking as she wiped her face. "I understand." "Good." My voice was cold, emotionless. "Let's start with the night you went to his place. What really happened?" She inhaled sharply, her gaze dropping to the floor. "He asked me to come over after one of our conversations. I told myself I was only going to talk, that I would not let anything happen. But when I got there, I realized how wrong it was. I felt sick to my stomach just being in his house. I stayed for 20 minutes, maybe less, and then I left. I swear, Tom, we did not sleep together." I studied her closely, searching for any sign of a lie. Her voice was steady, but I had learned the hard way that steady voices could still hide the truth. "And that was the only time?" I asked. "Yes," she said quickly, too quickly. After that, I knew I was crossing a line I could not come back from. I told him we could not do this, that I loved you and I wanted to fix things between us. I scoffed. "Fix things? You mean after you spent weeks sneaking around behind my back?" She flinched at the venom in my voice. "I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you. But I was never planning to leave you, Tom. I swear on everything, I never wanted that." "But he wanted you to, didn't he?" She hesitated for just a second, and that was all the confirmation I needed. "Yeah," she admitted softly. "He said he could make me happy, that I deserved better than feeling lonely in my own marriage. But I told him he was wrong. I told him I loved you. I let the words sink in. If you loved me, you would not have put me in this position in the first place." She broke down, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed into her hands. "I didn't know how to stop it, Tom. I wanted to. She exhaled sharply, like she was disgusted with herself. "I felt like I was already in too deep. But when you saw us last night, that was it for me. That was the moment I knew I had to tell you everything." I leaned back, rubbing a hand over my jaw. "So, what were you going to do if I hadn't seen you?" She shook her head, looking devastated. "I do not know. I hate myself for that." "Yeah, well, you should." I stood up and walked over to the window, staring at the dark street outside. It was empty now, but I could still picture the cab sitting there, waiting for her. I clenched my fists at my sides, forcing myself to breathe. "You said you blocked him." "I did," she whispered. "And if he tries to contact you again?" She straightened slightly, her face serious. "I will show you. I will not hide anything from you again, Tom. I promise." I turned to look at her, my gaze cold and unrelenting. "This is not going to be easy, Laura. You do not get to apologize and expect everything to go back to normal. If you want to fix this, you're going to have to prove it. And even then, I do not know if I will ever trust you again. She nodded frantically, as if she was afraid of losing whatever tiny chance she had left. I will do anything. Anything you need, Tom. Just do not leave me. I studied her for a long moment, wondering if she truly understood the depth of what she had done. Trust was not something you could rebuild overnight. It took time, and even then, there were no guarantees. I'm not leaving, I said finally, my voice steady. But do not mistake that for forgiveness. I'm not there yet. I do not know if I will ever be. Tears streamed down her face, but she nodded. I understand. I walked past her, heading for the stairs. We will see if you keep that promise. As I climbed the steps, her sobs followed behind me, but they did not shake me. Not this time. I was not the same man I was last night. The one who had walked into his own home expecting nothing but normalcy. That man had been blindsided, left vulnerable in a way he never wanted to feel again. Now I was something else. Colder, sharper, more cautious. I was done being the man who trusted blindly. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the moonlight spilling through the window. I did not know what the future held, and maybe that was the hardest part. But I did know one thing. Laura's second chance was going to be earned, not given. Every move she made from now on would be under my watchful eye. Every word, every action, every promise, tested again and again. And if she failed even once, if she so much as hesitated in proving her loyalty, there would not be another conversation. Because I was not the forgiving type. Not anymore.